Jim, I'm gonna put Jen Wood back out again. She seems to be having some trouble connecting, and then let her back in.
Sure. Tell us whenever you're set.
I'm gonna put Linda DeBruler back out because she's having trouble, it looks like. Looks like the majority are in, Roger.
All righty. And then Judy, it's okay to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening and welcome, everybody. This is a regular meeting of the Rives Township Planning Commission. Our moderator tonight is Judy, the township clerk. She'll be moderating our meeting. As always, I have a few Zoom instructions, and I'll repeat these later, but please do not chat in messages because it overloads the moderator's sidebar, and that feature is used to put your first and last name in when you would like to speak. And if you put in messages, it mingles with the names, and it's very hard to find the names, and it presents a great opportunity for those names to get lost. So please do not chat in messages to the moderator during the meeting. We'll call our meeting to order. The time is 6:33. And roll call vote. Please answer verbally and then by a raised hand as well, please. Dwight Carmer.
Here.
Jim Lindstrom.
Here.
Adam Williams is absent tonight, and I'll read a letter in that he sent. He called me this afternoon, and he had to work, and it was very unexpected, and he couldn't get out of it. And I said, please send me a letter, and I'll read that letter into the record. Roger, per our earlier conversation, I am notifying you in writing that I will not be available to attend tonight's meeting, tonight's Planning Commission public hearing due to a work commitment. Adam Williams. So Adam will have an excused absence. I'll continue with roll call vote. Christine Beecher.
Present.
Present. And my name is Roger DeCamp. I'm present as well. I'll also take a moment just to introduce our members of the Planning Commission. Dwight Carmer is the vice chair of the Planning Commission. He also is chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals, the ZBA. Jim Lindstrom is secretary, and Christine Beecher is also serves a dual role on the township board as township trustee, and she is known as the ex officio member on the Township Planning Commission. And once again, my name is Roger DeCamp. I'm the chairman, and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. Let the record reflect that roll call vote was taken, and all the members are present except for Adam Williams, and that is an excused absence. Agenda changes and approval. Is there a motion to accept the agenda?
Make a motion the agenda be approved as printed.
There's a motion that the agenda be approved as printed. Is there support?
I'll support it, Roger.
Been supported. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? That motion is carried, all yeas. Review and approval of the minutes of the February 16th, 2021 regular Planning Commission meeting. You've had the minutes in your possession for some time. Have all the members had a chance to read the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone need time to read the minutes? If not, then I would entertain a motion that to approve the minutes.
Make a motion the minutes be
Motion.
approved.
Thank you, Dwight. Is there support?
I'll support it.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the minutes as written into the meeting. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? That motion is carried, all yeas. Reports. Zoning Board of Appeals, Dwight.
Haven't had any meetings, just several phone conversations with people.
Okay, is there anything else to add?
No.
I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Township Board.
Well, we had our public comment hearing last week. Everything went well. We do have an audit coming up in May, I believe, and that's pretty much everything that was covered, or that is, of value to this particular planning commission meeting. Can you hear me?
Your
Ron?
public, I can. Your hearing was on the budget?
Yes.
Yeah, that was on the budget. Okay, thank you. Anything further?
No,
Christine, anything further?
no,
Okay,
sir.
thank you very much. Yeah, PC members, any comments?
None.
The only comment I have. Go ahead, Dwight.
I don't have any.
Jim,
I have none.
Christine.
None.
The only one I have, I'm just going to comment. I was asked to look into the solar ordinance that Tompkins might have, and I did do that. So last month's minutes had that information. Just let the minutes reflect that I did do that, and I sent that material to everyone. It was on their website, that information. So that's all I have. We are on our agenda tonight. The business we have is the public hearing, zoning amendments. And on the agenda, I have just a brief outline there of the proceedings, so you can follow the Planning Commission. There'll be introduction and procedures. Then we'll open the public hearing, and the Planning Commission will have a part there. then there'll be a public comment period, and that'll open, and then that will close, and then the Planning Commission will go into deliberation. So I'm going to expand on some of those things just a little bit here. Once again, with some, I'll repeat the chat in rules, but the introduction and procedures, the Planning Commission, we are the Planning Commission. If you have not joined us before, we are not the Township Board. I always like to make that sure because it's easy to get confused of who does what. And the second role of the Planning Commission is that we recommend only. So this committee, the Planning Commission, their role is to recommend to the Township Board. The Township Board is the body that approves or allows, with whichever verbiage you'd like to use. We can only recommend. So anything we do here is recommended to the board, and the Township Board has the final approval or allowance on that, and they always can have the authority to send it back to us or change our work. So that's the role of the PC. There are some rules to be followed in a public hearing that are different than the guidelines that you have for public comments in a regular meeting. And the public comments will come later in our meeting, as you see, because it's a regular meeting. So I'm going to go over these rules with you. We will be following the 3-minute rule for speaking, and I'll repeat that when we get to that portion of the meeting. But just to reiterate again, you'll use the chat feature to sign in, first and last name, and then when the moderator opens the floor to you, we ask you to state your name and where you're from for the public record. And I'll be repeating that again later. And please do not chat in comments. So the public hearing is different than the public comment in a regular meeting. The public hearing is limited to the proposed material that has been published by that has been sent in by the Planning Commission and has been published. I'll say that again. The public hearing is limited to the proposed material that has been published and produced by the Planning Commission. If a letter has been read, is the same, such as a form letter, because we did receive 2 groups of form letters, and that's fine. But if your letter has already been, there's no reason for the committee to hear it again. It's a hearing, and we've heard it. Furthermore, we've received these all week long, and we thank everyone for that, and we've read them. So once again, there's limits and there's some strict rules to the public hearing. And so you have an opportunity to be heard. If your letter has been read and you still want to speak, that's fine. I want to be clear about that. But just stand up and state your name and so forth and say that I had the same form letter, and you can reference it and say, I agree with previous speakers and so forth. And if you did not send your letter in and you wanted to be heard tonight, you still, even though it doesn't need to be read again because we've already heard it, you can send it in to the township clerk email address, or you can drop it off at the township office and it will go into the public record. It's no different than a live meeting where if your letter had been heard and it was a form letter, you would still, because your signature's on it and you want to be on the record supporting that letter, you would lay it on our table. So in this case, you would email it to the clerk. I know during the advertisement, it gave the chairman, maybe the secretary's email address. I'm asking, and the clerk, and I'm asking you to send it to the clerk because she will timestamp it. That's because now we're into the meeting, so I ask you to do that. Send it to the clerk, drop it off at the township office during hours, and they have their drive-up window open. So appreciate that. You have a chance to comment and reinforce your letter, but like I say, we don't need to hear that again. The other thing I want to talk about here is that if during the public comment portion, I'm going to give you some examples of, I already said it's our proposed material. So if you were to read an ordinance that came from another community, that material would not be relevant to tonight's public hearing because it wasn't proposed or produced by the Planning Commission, nor was it advertised, which is required by law. So that wouldn't be allowed. And the chair would have to step in and disallow that. So I want to be very clear about that. Or any other material that was not produced by the Planning Commission and published. It's just not allowed in a public hearing. That's why I say it's much different than public comment, where you can say anything you want to. So if you would abide by those, the chair won't have to step in and stop that. I really appreciate it. So if at any time you have new information, or you may have a form letter that's already been read, but your signature's on it, like I said, and you just want to get it into the record, comment, chat in, or sign in, comment, and just say, I have the same letter, reference it, and voice your support. And we want to hear. We want to hear. So I hope I've been clear on that, and I hope I've been clear that no one's being disallowed, but repetition is not what we're here for. We're here to hear comments and collect information. And when those letters are heard and read, they're heard and read. So thank you. So with that, I want to state the purpose of this meeting very clearly. The purpose of this meeting is specific and limited to the material that's been proposed and published. And I'm going to call on our secretary about some of the publishing. And Jim, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Roger. As required by law, the notice was given to the public as was posted in the Salesman of March 7th, 2021. It was also posted on the township web page under the PC page on township events. It was also available at the township office by appointment during regular business hours. That's the proposed zoning amendment was made available for review in those methods.
Thank you, Jim. Is that are we concluded?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We're about to open the public hearing, and I'm going to ask the Planning Commission members, do they have any further thoughts or comments before we enter into the public hearing at this time? And
I have some summary notes to explain the amendment. Is this the
Right.
time to offer those?
no, it's not. We'll, as soon as we enter into the public hearing, that'll be the time. So I just want to ask the Planning Commission members if you're prepared now. I want to take a vote just to open this. I want to take a vote by the members that they're ready to open the public hearing. So all in favor say aye.
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 Then that's made by unanimous consent of the members that are present. And we'll record the time. Jim, do you have that?
It's 6:50.
Yep, 6:50. Hearing opened at 6:50 p.m. And I'll call on our secretary, Jim, to give a presentation of the proposed work.
The information from the PC on the proposed zoning text amendments include the following. Number one, deleting the last sentence of section 17.01 purpose, which stated, if the specific use of land, natural resources, and structures are not listed as a permitted use in this ordinance, conditional use permits are required and can only be granted by the Rives Township Board. Period. Number two, revise section 17.23B to clarify that conditional uses under the ordinance are only permitted if they are specifically listed as a conditional use in the zoning district. Number three, the zoning amendment substantially overhauls industrial district regulations under the ordinance. The overhaul attempts to limit industrial uses in a zoned industrial district to light industrial uses that are compatible with surrounding agricultural and residential districts. The amendment recognizes that intensive industrial uses are not compatible with the rural character of the township, and therefore such uses are not permitted under the ordinance. The permitted and conditional uses listed in the zoning amendment are limited to uses that can be conducted consistent with the township's rural character. In this regard, there are no heavy manufacturing industrial uses or power plants that are allowed in the new light industrial zoning district. Number four, Article 7 of the zoning ordinance is amended by adding new required standards and findings that must be made before a conditional use permit may be granted for certain listed certain listed uses, including new standards, trucking and transit terminals, contractor storage yard uses, repair garages and paint shops uses, sales of construction and farm equipment uses, and for self-storage facilities. Each of these uses may be permitted as a conditional use only if the additional standards and findings are satisfied, adding additional protections to neighboring agriculture and residential uses. Number five, new site plan performance guarantees and escrow requirements are added to Article 8 of the ordinance to assure that developers in the township pay for all costs associated with developments requiring site plan review, and to assure that certain uses and projects, when completed, are decommissioned and the land and environment reclaimed and restored to its condition prior to the use. This is in keeping with the concept of, and to assure that all costs related to developments and any potential adverse effects caused by developments in the township should be borne and paid for by the developer. Period. That's the end of the summary.
Thank you, Jim. We have with us this evening from CWA, Carlisle Wharton, planner John Enos, and I'll call on John, who we had professional help from this company, and John is here to give a overview as well. Go ahead, John.
Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, commissioners. It's been a while. Appreciate your time tonight, and certainly all the residents who are online tonight too. So it's been a while, hasn't it? So you've been working on crafting this language for many months. If you recall, the very first meeting that we had, we talked about how do we get from A to Z with amending any part of a zoning ordinance. What I provided you back in the day was a pretty typical industrial district. My company writes many zoning ordinances and regularly works with text amendments for both rural and suburban and very urban communities. So the first step was just providing you a kind of a template for an industrial district. The template because the current township's ordinance is old, and we're not going to get into many other parts of that. But in this particular case, we wanted to provide you something simple and reasonable and regulatory and protective in regards to the rural character of the community. So we provided you that language, and over the course of the many months, you did what you did your job as planning commissioners. You looked at that language, you massaged it, you added things, you took some things out, you directed it towards the master plan, you directed it toward what you'd heard from the residents, you directed it towards the rural character, primarily and specifically focusing on the fact that the community wants to remain rural with limited infrastructure, no Class A roads, no water, no sewer. And so that's specifically noted in the intent and purpose of this district. So I'm not going to read through it. We just kind of went over the gist of the amendments tonight. But as your planner and as a planner with 25 years of experience writing numerous ordinances, it's my opinion this language is thoughtful, it's reasonable, it's legal, and again, it clearly focuses on the rural character of the township. You can never write an ordinance, not that I've seen in all my years, that lists all the potential uses, but you can certainly craft it to focus on the types of uses that you want in your community, and that's what this language does. Beginning with the very first line of the district, light industrial. It then carries on into the purpose and intent of the district in regards to maintaining that rural character, and then it goes into the permitted uses, and then the conditional / special uses. So I commend you, Commission. I think you did a fine job. This language does exactly what you wanted it to do. And I've talked with the attorney, the township attorney, and he's comfortable with the language. So my recommendation to you this evening, and as the chairman indicated, would be to make an advisory recommendation to the township board, who ultimately make the final decision on this. And so that's my recommendation, commissioners.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your overview. On your agenda, we are at the point to receive public comment. Commissioners, anything before we move into the next step? Is there anything from our commissioners that they would like to add at this time? Yes, Jim.
Point out to you that I have received the letters, written letters, and I have those categorized and can give you a summary of those when you're ready, if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm going, as soon as we open up public comment, I'm going to call upon you to do that summary. So any other comments from the commissioners? If not, is the Planning Commission ready to receive public comments? Ready? Okay. Well, we will record the time, 6:59. And the public comment portion of our meeting is open. Any correspondence received, and I mean emailed in ahead of time, Jim is going to, it's been accepted. We're going to accept that into the public record, and the secretary is going to give a summary of that information. So Jim, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Roger. We have received written comments regarding the proposed industrial ordinance amendments from Richard Jansen, a resident, Michelle Messenger and Tim Horsch, resident, Tyler Cox, non-resident, Luke Rumwalt, a non-resident, Janice Cox, a non-resident, Brooke Rodriguez, a non-resident, Megan Short, a non-resident, Pat Cochran, a resident, Chris Fauser and Lisa Fauser, resident, Katie Powell, non-resident, Pat and Chuck Berry, non-resident, Chelsea Cox, non-resident, Gary Baum and Amy Tuttle, resident, Jennifer Wood, resident, Stephanie Gonzalez, non-resident, Christopher Fauser, resident, Jessica and Bill Bemmer, resident, Shayna Burke, I couldn't tell, Olson, Braddock, Howard, attorneys for CKRR, another Fahey, Schultz, Burshek, and Rhodes, attorneys for Attorney Chris Patterson on behalf of Priscilla Hart, resident, Ashley Banks, non-resident, Juliet Quinton, resident, Joseph Quinton, resident, Jared Quinton, resident, and Sally Christensen, resident. Those are the ones I'm aware of and that I have in my hand here. There were, as Roger mentioned, there were several of these that were form letters. And so we had form letter number 1. We had from Tyler Cox, non-resident, from Luke Rumwalt, non-resident, Janice Cox, non-resident, Brooke Rodriguez, non-resident, Katie Powell, non-resident, Pat and Chuck Berry, non-resident, Chelsea Cox, non-resident, Stephanie Gonzalez, non-resident, Ashley Banks, non-resident. Then in another category, form letter number 2, that had 6 bullet points on it in reference to the letter from the attorneys in Traverse City. We had form letters like that from Michelle Messenger and Tim Horsch, Megan Short, Pat Cochran, resident, Chris Fauser and Lisa Fauser, resident, Jessica and Bill Bemmer, resident, Shayna Burke, resident, unknown, and Juliet Quinton, resident, Joseph Quinton, resident, Jared Quinton, resident, and Sally Christensen, resident. So if as any of you in the public that want to reiterate once what form letter number 1 stated or form letter number 2 stated, you're welcome to do that. There were other one-off style comments from Priscilla Hart, from Christopher Fauser, from Jennifer Wood, from Gary Baum and Amy Tuttle, and from Richard Jansen. And to report, Roger.
Thank you, Jim. The Planning Commission will receive those said letters into the meeting, and they'll be attached to the public record. Once again, we're about to have the moderator call on the public, and I'll repeat again, use the chat feature to sign in so the moderator can recognize you. First and last name only, please. And then when the moderator, I guess, opens you up and you address the Planning Commission, please state your name and where you're from for the record. Very important in the public hearing. So please do that. And once again, if you have a correspondence that you've signed and maybe it is a form letter, but it didn't get emailed into us, please speak. And if it's been read, it's been read. But please speak and reference that letter and mail it into us, email it into the clerk, or drop it off at the office so we can attach that to the public record as well. So go ahead, Judy. And I don't, also to the public, I don't have visibility that the moderator does. So I have to go, I rely on the moderator to do this.
Time is
Make sure-
7:06.
Meg Short, if you could unmute.
Thank you, Jim.
Megan Short. Planning Commission members, thank you for your commitment to this ordinance. Your work here is so important. Tonight, I ask that you please keep in mind that this ordinance will affect the lives of real people. Real people who love and value their families, their health, and their homes. Real people like Joseph Yang, who may live with smokestacks in his view shed for the next 40 plus years. And Jeff and Arlene Stevens, whose beautiful home might suddenly be surrounded by an industrial construction site. Like Todd and Linda DeBruler, whose property values would surely plummet. Or Chris and Lisa Fowler, who are likely to have their home and land flood if the farmland on the hill is paved over. Remember Lisa Manuel and her family, who may be forced to share the dirt road to and from their home with massive machinery, industrial traffic, and dangerous tinkers every day. And Carol Schultz, who owns Winden Hill Dressage Farm, that could be forced to close if her business can no longer safely operate due to the improper siting of another. And I ask that you really, really remember Jen and Andrew Wood, CJ and Melissa Fowler, who are just a couple of the families with toddlers and brand new babies with tiny, fragile lungs that may be forced to breathe air poisoned by what could be one of the largest industrial polluters in the entire state. Remember the people like Bob and Sally Fowler, Don and Helen Peterson, Darl and Kathy Wood, Pat Cochran, Jeff and Kelly Wood, and know that they and so many others are counting on you to do the right thing tonight. Think of these good people and act. Choose to keep Rise Rule by amending this ordinance as recommended by the Carr attorney. And let's put this monster to bed once and for all. It's always the right time to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Next is Debbie Miller.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to the PC for so diligently working to get caught up after all the delays with COVID. I know it's been a long time, but I think you've done a great job. I'm sure you've also received the letter from the attorney that was supported by the Carr Group. I just want to go through with a couple comments on that. Much of the information is redundant in it. In section 17.01, it's redundant. My big concern is in section 17.55. I know the attorney stated that you could put wording in there that excludes a power plant, but I'm very concerned that if we engage in this exclusionary zoning, we might be shooting ourselves in the foot for later. We have no idea what our grandchildren and children and their children are going to have to deal with. So I'd be very careful how we word that. Also, on their information about 1756 and 57, they wanted some clarification of similar uses. There's no way we could possibly clarify every possible use, but I do agree that we should add in terms of standard industrial classification and level of impact on the environmental, existing neighboring land uses, and the overall character of land use in Rives Township. The last thing I have is on the waiver. And we have two items in there that says they must demonstrate one of the following. I believe it should say demonstrate both of the following. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Alex Silvestri,
Hear me? Can you hear me?
yes.
Alex Silvestri, Rives Township. I'd like to thank, first, I'd like to thank the citizens to keep Rives rural for their unwavering dedication and love for this community. It is with no doubt that we would not be here today if it weren't for the diligence of families such as the Shorts, the Woods, the Yangs, the Cochrans, and many others. I'd also like to thank the Planning Commission for their efforts in the last several years. It's been a circus sometimes, it's been a displeasure sometimes, but I have always known that the people on that Planning Commission do have the best interests of this township at heart. I ask tonight that the Planning Commission consider these families and their future generations who will live and love this place we call home. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Lisa Manuel,
Hi, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, Lisa Manuel, 3033 Baseline Road. I want to start by saying my family moved here to Rives Township about 15 years ago. We chose to buy property on Baseline Road because of the quiet, peaceful nature of this place. When I leave my windows open in the summertime, I hear nothing but birds, frogs, rustling leaves, and an occasional tractor. Rarely does a car even pass. We thought this would be a perfect place to raise our daughter with plentiful fresh air and clean water. Never in our wildest dreams did we think we would have to be concerned about protecting that clean air or the aquifer that provides our drinking water. But as it turns out, we do need to be concerned. And this industrial ordinance is vital to protecting everything we love about this place. I'm happy the Planning Commission has included plenty of rural character language in the master plan. Thank you all for that. And now I'm asking that you all include the 6 changes that the Citizens to Keep Rives Rural has asked for, and our attorney, Lydia Barbara Riley, has stated here tonight. Please help us ensure that no polluting industry can come here in the future that may squeeze through a loophole in our industrial ordinance. The master plan is good. Please add the 6 changes so we can ensure that this place remains the quiet rural community that we all value and love. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Lydia Barbash Riley,
Would you repeat that, Judy?
Lydia Barbash Riley.
Thank you, and good evening, members of the Planning Commission. And thank you so much for taking the time to hear and carefully consider public comments on the proposed amendment to the industrial zoning ordinance tonight. My name is Lydia Barbash Riley, and I'm an attorney representing the group Citizens to Keep Rives Rural, which I'll abbreviate as CKRR. As you may know, this group is a grassroots organization dedicated to conserving the rural character and agricultural landscape of Rives Township. CKRR recognizes that the Planning Commission has made significant efforts to improve the industrial zoning ordinance, and we commend you for that. The changes to the use regulations and the transition from an industrial to a light industrial district in particular are much better than the existing ordinance. But there are a few things that we think can be done to improve on that great start and make this a really excellent airtight ordinance. I've already submitted written comments on the proposed amendments to the Planning Commission on CKRR's behalf. So this evening, instead, I'm just going to focus my comments on what we think are particularly critical to get right. The first and the most important is our proposal to add language that certain types of energy facilities like coal and natural gas, but to be clear, not all energy facilities, are examples of intensive industrial uses that would conflict with and harm the character of the township at the end of section 17.55. We also recommend adding similar language to the definition of essential services to specify that it doesn't include facilities used to generate electric power from these types of non-renewable fuels. There just isn't the need for this type of power generation here in Rives Township or really anywhere in the Lower Peninsula right now. And even if there was, there isn't an appropriate place in Rives Township to locate that type of power plant. If these terms aren't included, then it could potentially leave the door open to arguments in the future that a very intensive industrial use, for example, a coal or gas-fired power plant, might somehow be allowed as an essential service. Now, I don't think that the definition of essential service as it is now should allow for that type of use, but if it isn't specifically spelled out that this type of use isn't appropriate and doesn't fall under the exception in 17.27 for essential services, then the township might be faced with a situation where they have to fight with an applicant over whether that type of use is allowed. Second, we suggest that the ordinance specify how other similar uses are determined in the ordinance. If it's spelled out more specifically, we think that will avoid a lot of unnecessary confusion and time spent considering applications that just really aren't appropriate for the zoning classification. The third and related item is the proposal to delete the last sentence of section 17.01. We recommend that instead of deleting the sentence entirely, it could be replaced with the words conditional use permits are required for uses of land, natural resources, and structures that are not listed as a permitted use in the ordinance and are not otherwise prohibited. It's important that the township make it clear that uses that aren't uses by right, specifically delineated in the ordinance, in fact, require a permit. And it's also important for the township to have some kind of catch-all for unlisted uses. And while it could be read into other parts of the ordinance, I think it would be preferable to have this clear from the outset. So in summary, CKRR is encouraging the township to shoot for an ordinance that is great, not just good like it is proposed tonight, and that will prevent unnecessary problems from arising in the future. Thank you very much for taking our comments. I'm happy to answer any questions either now or later on during the hearing tonight.
Thank you.
Next is Ursula Hart.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to thank the Planning Commission for doing a great job on this ordinance. Chris Patterson sent in a letter in reference for my, on behalf of me. He made two comments that I'd like to reiterate tonight. On section 17.56A and K and 17.57E on the other similar uses or similar uses using interpretation by the Planning Commission, allowing the Planning Commission to clarify or allow similar uses as these are expressly listed by the deemed unconstitutional as an improper delegation of legislative authority from the Township Board to the Planning Commission or otherwise violates the Whitman versus Gallup Township in 2010. Similar to the amendment reservation of the similar uses in its permitted and conditional uses, the court Whitman versus Gallup Township had a zoning ordinance provision which listed a permitted special use land as established of conducting of commercial and industrial activities such to improve the zoning board as invalid under the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act for failing to specify the land uses eligible for approval. Did the planner and the attorney review these to make sure they're constitutional and enforceable at this point? One question. Second one would be the section of 17.85C regarding commissions to permit conditional uses under undetermined alternative standards that may not advance the interest of the master plan. That is reasonable to assume that if a conditional use does not otherwise meet the standards of the 17.85B and the uses will likely conflict with the surrounding areas in conflict with the master plan and the Zoning Enabling Act. And has that been addressed also tonight. Those are my two concerns. The rest of it looks great. Those would be the concerns I have. If we could get the wording taken out for the similar uses and the waiver. Thank you guys for doing a great job.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Next is Joseph Yang.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Joseph Yang, Johnston Road. I just want to thank the Planning Commission. Everybody has said it, but I want to reiterate it. It's been about 2 years now since we kind of started this ball rolling, and I know that some of the community members have changed over and had to catch up some other members, but I appreciate it. You taking sample after sample and suggestion after suggestion into consideration to draft this ordinance. I think it's a good ordinance, but I think that we can still improve on some things. I think we're almost there. We're almost to the point where our families in Rives Township and the surrounding areas feel safe, where my 81-year-old mother can feel safe and confident being outside tending to her garden, and my 7-year-old can breathe deep and roll around in the grass with his dog, Charlie. I would ask that you leave no doubt in this ordinance. Please specifically state that this township is not suited for heavy industry, specifically a fossil fuel electrical generation facility. Leave no doubt. We're almost there. To use a sports analogy, let's not fumble at the goal line. I would just ask that this planning commission take that into consideration and to lock up this ordinance. I know you've worked a lot on this, and it's important to make sure that we get this right for our current residents as well as the future generation. So I just want to thank everybody for their hard work, and I hope you take those suggestions into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.
Linda DeBruler.
Hi, Linda DeBruler, Baseline Road. I am a non-resident, but my husband and I live directly across the road from the township. The house on the other side of the road is in the township, and that's where, as we know, all of the stuff's been coming out about the power plant, what everybody's concerned about in the ordinance. First of all, I'd like to thank Lydia Riley and Chris Patterson for both contributing the letters that they have contributed to the PC and for all the hard work they've put in on it. It is truly appreciated, and I do hope that the PC will take into consideration some of, not major changes, but just a couple of things I think that could make it tighter. Also, nobody's really brought this up, and maybe it's just me. I have a little bit of concern on the research and development statement. It just makes me a little nervous because I know that Handy Township has similar wording, and they are all set up for a power plant if needed to be, and that would be able to go in under research and development. And just my thoughts on an earlier comment. Yes, some things are redundant, but sometimes things need to be repeated a few times in order for everybody to really let it sink in. And also, I did understand the comment about we have to be careful about what is put in for the future, as we do not know what will be for, the children and grandchildren, 30, 40 years down the road. But actually, that's what we're, the PC is doing now, because no one who would have been on the boards in the 50s, 60s, and 70s would have a clue as what could come through today, with a power plant or solar or any such thing. So I just would like the board to take into consideration everyone's concerns and the letters from the attorneys and all of the community residents, whether they're township or non-township. And thank you for all the work that you've put into this.
Thank you, Linda.
That's the end of the people that have signed up.
Thank you, Judy. I'll leave this open, Judy, in case someone else joins late here for just a moment. You'll have to tell me that.
Okay.
Is that agreeable with the commissioners?
Yes, we should give them a few
Yeah.
minutes to.
Well, if Judy, do you see anyone else entering into the meeting?
No, I don't have anybody else.
If everyone has spoke
Well,
that would like,
Roger?
Yes.
Bryce Hammond.
sure.
Can you
Did
hear
you say
me?
Bryce?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I've been asked to.
Is this Bryce?
Hello,
State name and where you're from, please.
my name's Bryce Hammond, 3768 Rowell Road, resident Rives. I'm speaking on behalf of Jo Beth Carlton. She's tied up with her kids going to bed right now, and she's not able to make the speech on her own. She's prepared a speech. I'm willing to read it off for her.
Please do.
Hi, my name is Jo Beth Carlton. I'm a resident of Rives Junction. I just moved here with my spouse and 2 young sons in December of 2019. And the reason why we chose this area was because of the quiet, the landscape, and the idea that we could raise our children away from the air, water, light, and noise pollution of cities and suburbs. We want our children to look at the sky and see thousands of stars. We want our children to be able to play freely in town and not have to worry about the air they're breathing. If Rise had a large industrial plant or even many small industrial businesses, I can say with certainty that we would have continued our search and crossed Rives off the list. I'm begging the Planning Commission members to please, please, please make the amendments proposed by Carr and their attorney. They have done so much work to make this a situation where the community is protected, and not just the people living here now, but future generations who hopefully settle down here. They don't just care about my life, but they're showing how much they care about my children as well, even though my children are only 2 and 4 and can't vote or contribute to society yet. These changes are necessary for our children, our grandchildren, and everyone who drives through town and thinks, I could live here, this is really nice. Adopting the changes proposed can also restore the peace of mind many residents have needed these past few years. Although I cannot speak for anything that happened before I moved here, I've met dozens and dozens of residents who are still uneasy about the idea of sharing this town with industrial plants that would damage the rural character of Rives. I know it's been on my mind since we got here, so I can't imagine the stress of long-term residents feeling like this is hanging over their heads and hasn't been changed yet. Please think of your children, your grandchildren, think of your neighbors and friends. Think of their children, their parents, their loved ones. Think about yourselves, of course, because you're just as valid as any of us, but please remember that these decisions affect everyone, even the ones who don't live here yet. Let's build the community in a way that benefits everyone and doesn't hurt anyone's health or happiness. And a great way to start is to adopt these changes to the ordinance and give people back their peace. You'll be remembered for it, I promise.
Thank you, Bryce. Judy, is there anyone else? While we're waiting, I'll remind folks to please submit that work either into the township office or to the township clerk's email address, so it can be time stamped, and we'll look for it to come into our meeting and it'll be accepted in because it's been read in here, and we'll watch for that. I'll ask the moderator one more time, is there any further comments?
Monica Day.
Hello, thank you so much for taking public comment. My name is Monica Day and I live in Jackson, Michigan. And I just wanted to be sure to put in my support for these changes. I appreciate what the Planning Commission is doing and to protect our community. And I just wanted to say that a couple of years ago when I attended some meetings in Rives, my faith in our country was restored because they're so tremendous, the residents stepping up to protect the land. And we do have a place, my family has a place in Tompkins as well. It's very close to the pipeline, which went in a few years ago. And, you know, Tompkins and Rives are, to me, they're very much connected. And and so is Jackson. So this is part of my community. I love it. I love Rives. It's incredibly beautiful and it's so important to protect. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, Monica.
Hello.
Yes. Who do we have?
This is Cindy Cheesebro. I'm at 3309 Baseline Road. And I would also like to reiterate the fact that we moved to the country for a reason. We've been out here over 11 years now, in Leslie Township over 30 years. And like Yang said, would you please make sure that there's no loophole for them to put the power plant in? Loophole being, like Yang said, specify that we do not want a power plant or big industrial in Rives Township. And it would be greatly appreciated. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Taylor later.
Go ahead and state your name, please. Where you're from?
Taylor, can you hear us? Taylor, are you there? She apparently just left.
Once again,
Hello.
if you, yes,
Hi,
please state.
sorry. I'm Taylor Later. For some reason it dropped me out of the call. I just wanted to
Please
say
state.
I live here. I'm Taylor Later. I live at
And
218
where are
Palmer.
you from? Okay.
218 Palmer, right in town. I just wanted to say I've lived here since I was a child. I've been here for 20 years now, over 20 years now. And I appreciate everything that this planning board and CKR has done to try and better and make sure that a power plant can't come in. And I would just like to say, I would love if we would to adopt those 6 pages and make sure that there was no way a power plant would be coming in. And I think that would be the best for all residents. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ask the moderator, how does that look? The way, I don't know what they call it, not the waiting room, but I guess the gallery. How does it look?
It's just a list, and Taylor was the last one on it.
Oh, okay. And were those, did those names come in a little bit later here? Or were they always on the list?
No, they've kept coming in.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, commissioners, is it all right if we leave this open just a few more minutes? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Judy, do you have any further names coming in?
No, I have nothing.
Then we have heard repeatedly, no power plant. The message is clear. Commissioners, are you prepared to close the public hearing? Tell me what you'd like to do. Or do you want to leave it open a little?
Nobody else has any comments to make. I think we're prepared to close the public hearing. You've asked 3 times if anybody else has comments, and several did. And so you asked again, and now you're asking again, gave some time for more people to comment. And hearing none, I'd suggest we close the hearing.
Yeah. Then I'll ask the commissioners if we're all in favor of closing the hearing, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, that's carried by unanimous consent. Time is 7:39. We will go into deliberation. Technically, we leave the public hearing and go back into the regular meeting at this point. Commissioners will go into deliberation, and that is for the planning commissioners only. And so, commissioners,
Did you want me to, Roger, did you want me to put people in the waiting room while you deliberate?
No, we closed the public hearing.
Okay.
Well, we just closed the public hearing at 7:39, and we're in deliberation. They can certainly come into the meeting, Judy. Judy?
Yes, they all are in the meeting.
Yeah, they can come to the meeting. I was just, the public comment period is closed and we just closed the public hearing, but yes, they can certainly come to the meeting. I want to be clear about that. So, commissioners, we've heard, we've received written, and you have written correspondence, and we've received public comments. And where would you like to begin? I'd like to review my notes. I need to review my notes for just a moment, and you can do the same thing if you need to. I've got several pages of them here, and so I can get those in some categories. Has everyone got their thoughts together on some of the comments? You need more time to review. So yeah, if everyone's had a minute to review their notes and have their thoughts together, I'd like to start off, and we have some territory to cover here. One of the things, well, we all sat here and heard, and these comments certainly mirrored the letters we received, both personal letters, the form letters, and even the individual letters read here tonight. There were some themes for sure. One is no power plant, and people love this rural area, and they've expressed that in through quiet and peaceful. Lisa Manuel said, "Never in our wildest dreams," and I think she speaks for all of us. Did we ever think something like that could come along, and it was a wake-up call. And we've talked about looking forward into the future, and comments like that, and preserving this the character that was in letters, maintaining, preserving. That was the language in some of the other letters that came in about this lifestyle that we have here in rural, and the piece that Bryce Hammond read, that Jo Beth Carlton said, you know, that if she thought this was a industrial community, they would have never moved here. And this is not an industrial community, and we've been very clear about that. And then just this this heavy weight and this burden that looms over people about the threat of a power plant. And I'd like to respond to some of these things. First of all, the master plan states that we just rolled out. It was time to redo it, and we did. It was a big task, and that is a 20 to 25 year plan. And that our zoning ordinance, the work we're doing and have proposed, follows the plan. It follows the plan. And all of your comments are met in that plan that were not well suited. There's future land use maps that we are not an industrial community. We have some very light industry here. We state that, we read at our ordinance and we state we're light, and we list what is light to our community. We went out and looked at communities. We looked at the definition of light industrial, and it was different in every community. There is no standard because, and rightfully so, every community had their own definition of light industrial that fit them. And we were advised, we spent time on this, and our professional people, after this, the finding, advise us to stay away from defining, trying to get caught into that trap of what light industrial was. And instead, we looked at our old ordinance, said it's got to go. We started from scratch. And our purpose or intent in 1755 says it all. It says what these people are echoing. The secretary read clearly that and I'll read it again. The township's rural character in this regard, there are no heavy manufacturing industrial uses or power plants that are allowed in this new light industrial zoning ordinance. That language was chosen. We've been very careful to stay away from mentioning some of that language because there's always been this looming elephant in the room, and we didn't want to get set up. We're working for you, and we didn't want to get set up in any, as planning commission members, stating our opinion on anything. So it would be a shoe-in through a court. We've been very, very careful, and that was a powerful language that we read, and we're careful not to mention names, but we're just talking about a type of use, and that's fair to do. Our ordinance is all designed with the people in mind, and it's defined through the permitted uses. When you read that list, and it's been published, it's just, most of it's almost commercial. It's just simple commercial stuff, but in our community, it's deemed light industrial. The other thing I'd like to say, I'll let someone else speak, but I think the correspondence we've received and the heartfelt response tonight, the Planning Commission hears you, and we did hear you, and we started that master plan long before the threat of a power plant came in, and like we said, it's a wake-up call, and we have worked, and we told you that we would look at our industrial ordinance, and here we are following the plan. And so other members, your thoughts? Do you agree, or did I go off the deep end somewhere?
No, I'll speak, Roger. Yeah,
Thank you.
We've sought some legal opinions and some information from our CWA from the attorney, township attorney, and I think it may be appropriate for them to weigh in on a couple of the topics. They've given us some guidance and some insight on some of the questions that have been raised by the other two attorney, the represented citizens.
Most certainly. Vic, would you like to, John has spoke, and would you like to speak? Vic? Vic is our township attorney.
I don't have any prepared statements. Of course, I'm legal counsel for the township, and I will address legal questions that you have related to the proposed amendments. I'll just, I think, a couple of the, I think one of the things is that this is just a text amendment, okay? And I think one of the issues that was raised and, about allowing other uses, other similar uses as permitted uses and as conditional uses. And, that language, I don't care if it stays in or it doesn't stay. And we've had this conversation, Roger, that, the truth is that if you don't allow for some flexibility in the ordinance, it becomes a little too rigid, and you set up the situation where if you don't have something that's on a list of permitted uses or something that's on a list of conditional uses, what you end up dealing with at that point is the possibility, the potential that somebody who wants to make a legitimate use of an industrial, a very light industrial use that's similar to the list of industrial uses that's there. Of course, that's criteria. It has to be similar to what's in the list, and that always is a judgment call for certain. And I understand the arguments to the contrary that there's no specifications related to those uses that the planning commission has to make a judgment as to whether it's similar or not, and that's true. But the reality is that there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, there's nothing legally wrong. There's a case that's cited there, but that case is way off point from what it was being used for, in my opinion, of course. And you understand this is my opinion. Other attorneys are going to have different opinions, and so that case that was cited there, it had a provision in it that said that all conduct of all commercial and industrial uses was permitted. Okay, it was a conditional use and it was permitted, and that was the reason that a court said that you had to specify what those uses are. And as far as what kind of specific enough to specify what those uses are, in my opinion, okay, adding a provision that says other similar uses is specific enough. Okay, and frankly, that language regarding specificity for uses listed is only related to conditional uses. It's not related to permitted uses. And so, again, adding that language, keeping that language in lends some flexibility and yes, some judgment to the planning commission to take a look at a proposed use, okay, and say, is this similar enough? Is it not similar enough? It certainly wouldn't include a power plant. And I hear, and I don't quite understand, I've not been involved in all of the history of all of this, but I don't quite understand the concerns about a potential power plant in the township. I mean, there's never been one that's ever even, I know that there was years ago, there was some discussions, but there was no application ever filed as far as I know. So, and that would have required rezoning anyway. Okay, so the point is that there's no land that's being rezoned here. We have a certain amount of industrial land that is can be used for the limited uses that are permitted in a light industrial zone. So the question for you is, do you want to allow that type of flexibility in your ordinance and to include some language there that says that similar uses that are similar to the list of uses that's up there should be something that we can consider, or you put that language out and of course it becomes rigid and then you have to potentially somebody who has a legitimate use that is, light, very light industrial, has to do a petition to get or the planning commission or board to do it, but do a zoning amendment, okay, and go through that process. So pros and cons, okay. Let's see, what other legal issues were raised? And we talked about that provision in the regarding waiver, and I think that we agree that, that waiver should include both of those conditions. And the question about, I guess there was, somebody raised a question about whether or not having standards or not having standards, some type of a waiver of standards under certain circumstances complies with the zoning enabling act. And, because the zoning enabling act requires that you have to have, for special uses in particular, you have to set forth its rules and procedures. But you got to understand that a special use permit, conditional use permit, your ordinance, goes through a fairly rigorous, or should anyway, go through a fairly rigorous process of complying with the site plan and all the site plan requirements. And with respect to waivers of some of the standards, if as long as it is something that is similar to other conditional uses and it's not going to be injurious to local residential and agricultural uses that are in the area, then the planning commission. I mean, frankly, I looked at that waiver language initially and I thought I scratched my head too. We want to have a provision in there that provides for waiver of some of those standards, and I read it. There's nothing legally wrong. Okay, that's a choice for the planning commission to make. And for the planner, okay, you had a planner helping you through this, and again, I've come in late here, but I know John Enos, and as he says, he's been doing planning work for 25 years, and frankly, when it comes to a planning decision, that's not my area. I defer to planners and to people who know that area better than I do with respect to their judgment on what should and should not go in the zoning ordinance. Quite frankly, I can address the legal issues, and I don't find anything legally wrong with what's being proposed here. I've heard the arguments, I've heard the concerns, and I acknowledge them. They obviously have legitimate fears and concerns. I don't know how justified they are under circumstances. A light industrial zoning district is not going to permit, in my opinion, as the township attorney, if somebody comes in and wants to do a large scale industrial power plant or something like that, that's going to be impossible to try to fit in the under the light industrial zoning. Now, there's a question as to whether or not, I don't know if we need to get into that, but I think I had this conversation early on. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you're done, I was going to make a comment after you were done.
No, go ahead. I'm done. I don't need to go down that rabbit hole that I was just going to go down.
I was going to say regarding the issue of other similar uses that we've used in the amended language for covering the conditional uses. In my opinion and my view and probably my vote, the thoughtfulness of and reasonableness and legalness of that language and the flexibility that allows to allow a request that would be similar to the other conditional uses that are spelled out. I think it's reasonable to use that language of similar.
Yep.
That's that topic. The next topic is the And it was recommended by CKRR's attorney in the event of, in the condition of the waivers, that both things be demonstrated, both that architectural or structural integrity and quality are not undermined, and that any deviation from the above standards will still provide for a harmonious development, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's reasonable to change our language, amend our language to allow both. As far as the realization and understanding that your planning commissioners for the township appreciate real people, appreciate fears of change, fears of dirty air as opposed to clean air, fears of dirty water as opposed to clean water. Rest assured that as I believe, and we've written the ordinance, that those things are in our uppermost desires also. So, you know, all of the people that made comments that we're opposed to those things or might be opposed to those things, I'm not. Back to you, Roger.
What they're concerned, of course, a little bit of what their concern is that you're here today, okay, tomorrow's another day, and, you know, another planning commission. But one of the things that, you know, I looked at when I looked at the language was how, of course, it controlled the other planning commissions. Now, you're always going to get, you know, I can't say always you're going to get, but it's always possible to get, you know, members who don't pay close enough attention to language in the ordinance. But if you do pay close enough attention to that language in the ordinance, there's not a fear, okay, of a power plant coming in. There's not a fear of heavy industrial coming into the township, okay, because that language in the zoning ordinance, and I presume the master plan, I haven't looked at the new master plan, but locks it in basically. So, in my opinion.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. The master plan, it's so wonderful to have done. And I know there was some people that thought that we should do the zoning ordinance first. And I was very firm about, we had this chicken and the egg talk. And I said, no, the plan comes first and you follow the plan. And I'm so thankful that we held our ground. We did that because now we are following the plan, and the plan is 20 to 25 years, and that addresses those future concerns. And we have some of the best maps. We have the best maps we've ever had. And I remember people they used to call them my maps, and you're so proud of those maps. They don't understand how powerful that those maps are when it's time to use them and how they come into play. And how the roadmap, when we say, we don't say that we don't have any water and sewer or any Class A roads. We say that, and then we say we don't have enough. We're very, very limited. We have water in the village, but not anywhere for, or sewer in the village, but we don't have it through the township. We have some Class A roads, very few, and they're not suited for industrials, how we finish that statement up. And then we have our roadmap to prove it. And we have a future land use map that pulls this whole package together. And when you look at our light industrial ordinance and you look at the permitted uses, as I said, most of it is all just commercial uses. And when we say under permitted uses similar to the above, where do you go? Where's above? Go back, you can go all the way back to the top of the industrial at 1755 and read that about potentially harmful, obnoxious matter. You can go through that whole thing. Then at the top of the permitted use section, this is on 2 of 10 of section 1756, read A. It starts to define. Someone says, how do you define it? It's defined right there in A. Right there it is. It's there's nothing industrial about it. And then it says again in similar uses, and then it says in B, light manufacturing, research, assembling, testing. There's just no way you can, I've heard people talk about, in the letters, they talked about heavy toxic waste, and they said that upon their review, I don't know if they reviewed our ordinance. At one time I thought that was supposed to be sent to another community. It didn't, it was nothing we were doing here. And our number K, uses for similar to the above, we didn't throw that in there and just walk away. We put it in there and had our planner and attorneys scrutinize that, because we understand that's the two-headed coin. And but we describe similar uses above, and we list. That's one of the reasons we listed so many permitted uses. There they are. And you can't get forging or heavy stamping out of that. And furthermore, when you look at our future land use map, there's nothing projected. Why? Because after 30 some years, our industry didn't grow. In fact, one or two shops we had left and gone out of business. So we're with the people. And I understand this fear about Section 5, and understand they just don't come into the Planning Commission. There's a rezone process that would have to happen. The chances are zero, for that. Can anybody make an application? Absolutely. But the process is they've got to go through the zoning inspector first to even get to us. And if they can get past the zoning inspector, and after he reads the ordinance and follows the plan, I want the folks to understand that these fears are unfounded. We have worked hard on this, and it started a long time ago on that master plan, and it's very, very important. And the flag that we wanted here for not only this planning commission, but planning commissions that come into the future. And that's why we laid these things out so clearly I think it gets down to that you just don't trust this planning commission, and you're not going to trust any in the future. And I don't know what to tell you. It's you've just got to understand the entire plan, and we have worked and ran scenarios to protect this community from not only power plants, but anything else that would ever come along in that line that's outside of the scope of some communication equipment, metering instruments. So our conditional uses are few. That was by design, and we have standards for them as required. I agree with you, Jim, on the waiver that word both should be included there instead of one. And I also would like to say one other thing, and then commissioners, I'll just turn something over on the Chris Patterson letter that was read, and it talked about unconstitutional and some things. Let me point something out. I'll read it to you, and it's in these different sections, and it says, I'll get towards my mic, allowing the commission to classify or allow similar uses as those that are expressly listed may be deemed unconstitutional as an improper delegation of legislative authority from the township board. I made it clear at the top of the meeting that this committee does not allow, and it doesn't allow, and it doesn't approve. We only can recommend. So it's not unconstitutional. Wrong board. We are the planning commission. We can't allow anything. We can only recommend. We can't approve. We can't allow. And so this isn't even applicable to what we do here. And I want to point that out. It's all right to throw it at us, but we throw it back. And that is not what we do. And you can look in the the ZEA, the MEA, and nowhere does this planning commission, have the authority to approve. We have to recommend to the township board, and they have final approval of anything we do. So this isn't applicable at all. And I must say, the information that we heard about essential services, that is not part of our proposed work, nor was it advertised. So it has to be struck. We can't respond to that. That's just not our work. And it would be wrong and incredibly unfair to respond to something that wasn't advertised. So other commissioners, your thoughts?
And let me just add something here, if I can, just for a second. I understand the argument that's being made there, okay, that doesn't provide enough standards for the planning commission. But that's not, it's not gonna be unconstitutional. There's no chance of that, because the standards are in the ordinance, okay? There are plenty of standards in that ordinance. You cannot just permit something that's not permitted under the standards of that ordinance, even if it's something that's similar, okay? So that argument that somehow or another that becomes an unconstitutional delegation of power, okay? That's a second reason that it does not hold water, in my opinion, of course. Now, another attorney's going to have an entirely different opinion. There's no question about it. But that's my opinion.
And on another, on page 2 of Mr. Patterson's letter, he talks about proposed waiver. The verbiage at C could allow the planning commission to permit a conditional use under undermined alternative standards that may advance the interests of the master plan. Follow the plan. We wrote the plan. This is impossible. For, once again, you got to get by the zoning inspector that doesn't follow the plan. You got to get by the master. You got to get.
It's not
by the planning commission that does, and then you got to get by a town. I'm sorry?
It's not impossible. It's not impossible for somebody who doesn't follow the ordinance, okay? But if you're following the ordinance, you are absolutely correct. It is impossible.
Well, it is, and it's got to get through all these people, and then the township board has to not follow the master plan. There's nothing that's impossible, but listen, whether I'm on this board or living in this community, they're still gonna have to deal with me, because and furthermore, not following the plan, judges have plenty to say about that by the time it gets to that level. And some of this is fear mongering, and it just has to stop. And like I said, it's just saying you have no confidence in the planning commission, the next planning commission, or the board, or anybody else. And there's just no response for that, other than we have hired professionals. We've done our work. Everyone's best interest, our best interest was in mind. I know I've done a lot of talking. Dwight or Christine, please.
Yes, I'll speak, Roger. I go along with what you and Jim said about the changing the word one to both on the waiver. I think that's a good.
Yes, and Christine?
I agree with that. I do see where the citizens could, regards to that 1756A and K and E, the similar uses and the similar uses interpreted by the planning commission. I understand what they're saying, but they still have to be the similar. To me, I understand it as it still has to be the similar uses, and then it has to be, the planning commission would have to approve it, but then the board would have to as well. So I believe that I'm in agreement with everything that you're saying, Roger, in that respect.
What are your thoughts on the waiver on the word one or both? Christine?
With the waiver,
where we have, they have to meet one of A or B or both, and both has been suggested by,
Yes, I believe both would be sufficient. Because
yeah,
if
I think it's,
induce that waiver, I believe that both of those prongs would have to be met to do so, ethically and legally.
yeah, and I agree in both of Chris Patterson and the Lydia's group both recommended that, and it's a good catch, and I agree as well. Further comments, please? I need just a minute to read some things. Section 1701 was brought up, where we deleted the lines, and once again, why did we do that? In the spirit of strengthening the ordinance that everyone has asked us to do, and there was a few other suggested a little language to put in there, but I really think we've gone through outside of the ordinance. Outside of just when I say that, the industrial ordinance, we picked out some other areas to strengthen the entire ordinance, not only the industrial, but all the ordinances, all the districts in the book. And I think people recognize that, they said so, but I feel our work is complete there. As far as addressing, and I'm saying this for the benefit of Christine, because you're newer.
Yes.
And as far as addressing power plants and natural gas and those comments, we had our people look at that, and we were advised to stay away from that language. And that's why we've done that. It's not that we didn't hear folks, and it's that it fell on deaf ears. It did not. And I stand on what we wrote. But I just want to address that. It's not that we're not paying attention to it. We looked at that, and we've stayed so completely away from that. There's no one that can even get a toehold to make the argument that a power plant or anything heavy industrial is available in this township. It's just not mentioned, and when it's not mentioned, there's no toehold at all. They got to show some need, and it's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle all the way. And like I say, anybody can make an application, but when it's a rezone involved, and when you look at the follow the plan, I can't say it enough. I'm so proud of the plan. When you follow the plan, you look at those future land use maps, there's not much conclusion. There's not much land. And then it's not well suited anyways. It's not just finding a piece of land. We already say, we talk about the character and these things. It's just, I think it's just nailed down so tight that I wish these people would understand that that argument is long behind us from an outside source wanting to come in through the proper channels of application and so forth. Preemption out of Lansing is something we can't begin to deal with.
Let me just offer something, even though I'm not being asked. I just dealt with this issue in another municipality, and the Zoning Enabling Act does require, that zoning decisions, all zoning decisions, have to be based upon the plan, okay, the master plan. If you do not follow the plan, then your decision is a decision, a zoning decision that doesn't follow the plan is subject to an attack for what's the basis of that decision, basically, arbitrariness. And so you're right. The plan is a very, very important document. It is the basis. It should be the basis of all. I haven't read the plan, but it should be the basis. It's required to be the basis under the Zoning Enabling Act. It's required to be the basis on all zoning decisions. Period.
Thank you, Vic. Any other comments from the commissioners? Can I direct your attention to page 3 of 10 on our proposed work, page 3 of 10. Section 1757, conditional uses, and take a look at E. We had heard from not only both the other attorneys, but numerous letters about the similar use. It was in the bullet points as well. We have a similar use under conditional uses that reads slightly different as interpreted by the Planning Commission. And we did take it serious. We sent it out for a second review. Not only was it reviewed the first time, but it was reviewed a second time per the letters, per the comments, per the correspondence that came in. And we want everyone to know that. We took it very seriously and looked at it again. And we're not just rendering our opinions here, but there was some consideration of some different language here, perhaps, or is the commission comfortable with this?
I am.
I am.
Christine?
Yes, I am.
Dwight?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Roger,
Yes,
are you?
I am. Yeah, I am.
Going around the table.
Thank you, Jim. I asked the commissioners, is there anything else you would like to bring up in the ordinance and respond to? Are you satisfied with the work we have produced and that our community is as secure as we can possibly make it? I just like to, address the Planning Commission that it's not all about the Planning Commission. It's about a process, and I know these people have fears, and it's clear they don't trust us. But the process, there's so much that can go wrong in a process. It can start with a zoning inspector. It can start in the check that, strike that. It can start in the office with a phone call before it ever gets to the zoning inspector. The process can go wrong there. It has nothing to do with us. It has nothing to do with what we write or what you suggest we write. The process can go wrong if people are not trained. You heard John, our planner and our attorney say, there's nothing that replaces well-trained people on a planning commission. And when you don't have well-trained people that are on the phones, answering the phones, and they know where to send it, and it gets sent wrong, and it doesn't go to a zoning inspector, and if a zoning inspector is inexperienced and not trained and doesn't handle it right, there's a lot of steps before it gets to your planning commission, and then we can only recommend. And when the steps have gone wrong in this process, and I don't care if it's this community or the next, I'm here to tell you, I think so much can go wrong in the process before it ever reaches a planning commission that it can be beyond repair. And I'm just saying, and then it goes to the township board. And there's just no substitute for well-trained people that, this committee knows that I'm big on training, and I enjoy training the public, because a well-trained, laser-focused public helps. Absolutely. So, commissioners, are you ready to make a decision?
Yes.
Well, I think we need a motion to change the word one to both in the last sentence of the waiver.
Well, that's where I was going to direct everyone's attention to page 8 of 10, C, the waiver. And everybody on the same page with me of the proposed work? Go ahead, commissioners. We're discussing the last line there. I think everybody knows what we're talking about. Provided, get over here. Provided that the applicant demonstrates that one of the following apply, and there's A and B, and we're considering provide that the applicant demonstrates that both of the following, A and B, both of the following apply, A and B. So if there's, I will call for the question. If someone would like to make a motion, we'll see if there's support for that so we can go into discussion.
I'll make the motion that the word one be changed to both in the last sentence of the waiver.
There's a motion on the floor to make a revision to this amended ordinance, delete the word one and insert the word both.
I second that.
There's support. I'll roll call vote. Jim?
Yes.
Dwight?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
And Roger, yes. That motion is carried, all yeas. Discussion? When you read A and B, and in the spirit of that waiver, when there is an adjustment required. And what folks need to understand, when you sit in these chairs, there are things that come along on pieces of property. Sometimes it's natural. It could be rivers, it can be different things, odd shapes, and not everything. Dwight, you've done this for, I can't remember if I'm 23 years or 24 and you're longer than I am, but
Yes.
these, it's not cookie cutter. And there are people, citizens in this gallery that want to have use of their land or something. And so these waivers and these similar uses are necessary, especially in a conditional use situation like this. So things can be fitted, and our job is to do it harmoniously, like the ordinance tells us, and to do it aesthetically into the community. And there's so many tests and so many areas of reasonability that have to be used. So A and B should apply. There's no reason that one of them should be left out, is what I'm saying when you read those. Any other further discussion?
No, I think that about covers it.
I'm sorry. Are we prepared to vote on this?
Yes.
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 Okay, last call for further discussion. We'll roll call vote. All in favor, say aye. Jim?
Aye.
Dwight?
Aye.
Christine?
Aye.
And Roger is aye. That motion is carried. All ayes. Is there any further revisions to the proposed work, commissioners? Well, if not, give me one moment. Some of my papers got shuffled here. If there's no further discussion on the material we've received and the comments we've heard, I'll ask the Planning Commission members, are you prepared to move forward in the drafting a motion on this proposed work?
Yes.
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
I as well.
I guess, Roger, I'll take the lead here. The motion that I would make would be that we would, based upon our review of the master plan, our review of and work on the preparation of the proposed amendments and deliberate, taking the public hearing comments, written and verbal today, and deliberating on those and making the one amendment of changing the suggested wording by both of the outside attorneys and the recommendation of our attorney and the discussion among ourselves of changing, replacing the word one with both, that we pass on our recommendation of the proposed amended industrial ordinance.
There's a motion on the floor.
I'll
Is there-
second that motion, Roger.
There is support by Christine. Moved by Jim, supported by Christine. Further discussion?
I might add the ordinance number of 2021-1 is the ordinance that we are voting on.
I'll accept that amendment.
We're yes, in its entirety with the revision as stated. Mhm.
Yes.
Further discussion? Well, we're prepared for a roll call vote then. There's no further discussion. In fact, it's just important, I think, while we're still in discussion, that, and we're preparing for this vote, that we recognize and we have heard the people and the fear, and we have started out on a journey a long time ago in this direction, so they don't have to live with this fear and with this heavy weight over their head that we heard them say. I think that's word for word, and that they can have, feel peace. We have worked to keep this area rural. We've worked our tail off, keeping this rural lifestyle and the character. We're not only maintaining it, we're strengthening it as they've asked us to do. That was our whole purpose. And this ordinance is for Rives Township, and it fits us incredibly well. And so I'd like that to be reflected in the minutes, Jim.
Getting it, yep.
Indicate when you're ready, Jim, and we'll call for a vote.
Okay, I'm ready.
The motion has been put on the table. It's been supported, and we'll do this by roll call vote. Jim?
Yes.
Dwight?
Yes.
Christine?
Yes.
Roger is a yes. The motion is carried, all yeas, no nays. Thank you, commissioners. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your input, your letters, your concerns. Very important to us that you know they've been heard. They were looked at and taken very seriously. And we're very excited that our community is very, very near to being much more secure than maybe it was with the older ordinance. This concludes our business that was on the agenda. We will move into public comment. Once again, I use the chat feature to sign in, and the guidelines are on your agenda. It's 3 minutes, and this is public comment. So we will. You have the time, Jim. We'll open that now. 8:41.
Excuse me, Roger, Mr. Chairman. Roger?
Yes.
With your permission, I'm going to go ahead and leave the meeting. I don't think there's any more call for me to be present. If you'd like me to stay, I will.
No, no, absolutely. I thank you, Vic and John, for attending, and certainly we're just under public comments and we're wrapping up. And thanks for your input and your support.
Thank you. Thank you, the rest of the commissioners. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Judy, are you there?
Yes, I am. I don't have anyone on the comment list.
Well, we'll give it a minute. Public comment is open. The time was 8:41.
Roger, I'd like to make a statement.
Sure.
All the residents talk about rural character and keeping Rives rural. My great-grandfather moved on the farm that I live on right now 140 years ago. Now, it was rural then, and it's not getting any more rural now. I mean, I can go up and down the road and name hundreds of houses that weren't there when I was a kid. Yet, we still portray ourselves as a rural community, which actually we are. And we're trying to maintain what we have now. And I think this ordinance goes a long way in keeping it from any industry coming in that would be detrimental to the rural character of the township.
Well, you're absolutely right. And when we are I know some people like to refer to us as agriculture. We are not agriculture. Everyone knows my background, 44 years in agribusiness, and this is not an agricultural community. We are a rural residential community. Yes, there's some agriculture, but very, very small. But we're a rural residential, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just stating a fact, but we want to preserve that. Absolutely. Boy, when people talk about, birds, the sound of birds and wildlife, I identify, and I think you do too, Dwight. We that's why we're here. I'm a lifer. I'm a third generation Rives Township person, and absolutely.
Roger, I have Meg Short.
Yes, go ahead, Megan.
I just want to make one quick comment that you stated earlier, Roger, that the power plant, our fears about the power plant are unfounded. I just want to make one quick comment. If you go to the website www.Cornerstone Energy Center, I think you will quickly see that our fears are very much substantiated. That's all. Thank you.
Priscilla Hart.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to reiterate something that Roger stated about trust. With trust, Roger, it's earned. You need, the township needs to earn the community's trust again, because there was a blue blob, as I will refer it to, that was placed. And I have the emails to prove that there was not underhanded ways of how this power plant was done. So to earn trust, you have to show us that you're doing stuff for us as a community, not just showing what you want us to give you trust back. That it works both ways. And at this point, when you have a power plant that's thrown in my backyard, and I've hired Chris Patterson, he's been an awesome attorney. He has worked with this group. He's done really well. I think that some of the comments tonight regarding his letter I don't think was appropriate, but that's for you to decide. And I would like to let you know, I do approve the ordinance, but I do want to make sure that our township is covered and that we're not having constitutional issues later down the road with this ordinance that he presented with concerns before you guys made the motion. Thank you.
Lisa Manuel.
I just wanted to just comment that I'm pretty disappointed that we didn't get very many of our changes that we requested. And just so you know, I'm not so sure Novi is gone. I know you all are super convinced that they are. They renewed their licensing for Cornerstone Energy with Lara. I think they're just waiting patiently to see what happens with this. And I'm glad you all are convinced that it's fine, but I'm not so sure. That's all.
I don't have anybody else.
Well,
If there's no one further, Roger, I motion to adjourn.
Support.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned. 8:48, and our next meeting is regular schedule.
Yeah.